Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Marlins podcast. I am one of your hosts today, Javier Arraez, with the best Twitter handle in the game if you so choose to seek it out, at Javapeno, Javiiipeno. You can also find my work on other baseball-related stuff over at justbaseball.com, to which I am rocking a very cool hoodie. It is a very good website. Just wrote about Matt Waldron being one of the big people to step up for the Padres. And we will be talking about him on today's show as well. My other host, of course, needs no introduction, of course. He is the pride of the UK. He's watching the Olympics, seeing the whatever medal they won the other day in the sprint. I forgot what it was. Men's 400? I forgot what it was. He's watching that. He's cheering. He's over there. It is Mr. Peter Pratt, the host of Locked On Marlins. Sir, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Olympic fever has gripped the UK, I guess, and there's a few other fevers gripping the UK as well at the moment. It's pretty wild scenes, no doubt. But yeah, all is good over here. We are post-deadline Marlins, so that is different to this, to last year. But we're still having fun. We're smiling through the pain, I guess.
Smiling through the pain. You got to do that. It's really important. Everybody out there, you got to learn to smile. I'm not saying that you ignore the stuff, but you got to try and push through, man. And we're going to be pushing through on today's episode, talking about the trade deadline, because not just because it's these two teams are, both made big moves at the deadline, but they made moves with each other. So they're really important. We're going to talk about all those things, what it was like from the Marlins perspective, as well as Padres as well. Get into some of the pitching matchups and biggest storylines. Peter, let us begin, man. First of all, just plain and simple, post-trade deadline, what is the mindset of the Marlins? Because, man, did they have a bit of a garage sale. No, not even a garage sale, just a general fire sale. It was big-time players that they were selling off. How's it going over there?
They moved a lot, didn't they? It was a volume play, I think, in summary. So it was what I expected, to be honest. I think a few other Marlins fans maybe weren't expecting it to be that degree of volume, but it was pretty clear that if you're in arbitration, near arbitration, or a reliever, then you're in play. And I think they made the moves they wanted to make, seemingly. I think they ran out of time. I think they would have made other moves. I think they probably would have liked the deadline to be a little bit later in the day. Because I think my sense is there's a few relievers there that have stayed with the Marlins. I was like, that's surprising. But I just think they ran out of time. I think Peter Bendix he only had 7 phones. That's all he could do. So you work with what you've got. But a lot of volume. And obviously, when I look back and reflect, obviously, the Tanner Scott deal, he was the best player available in many ways. Some would say maybe Jazz Chisholm was the best player available, the Marlins moving. But I think in terms of legitimate elite dudes, like Tanner Scott was definitely that. So all eyeballs were on that. You knew he had to be moved because obviously an expiring deal. So, when we think about the Marlins Padres in 2024, we'll look back and we'll see effectively the Padres farm system transferred over to the Marlins seemingly with 7 guys plus Suck Go. I mean, you can throw him in as 8 guys if you include Go in there as well. So that's 8 guys, prospects, that came across to the Marlins from the Padres this year. So listen, Preller just, he's coined that phrase, I guess, right? Just F them prospects. That seems to be the way for Preller. So, I love it. I love the aggressiveness, go and get Tanner Scott. So, post Marlins deadline is one that there's the reality check has kicked in. This is a rebuild, baby. Is this a retool? Are they going in for 25? No. This is a rebuild. And now we've seen what's happened. Now we know that. And now it's, you're in that kind of 7 stages of grief or whatever it might be. Yeah. And now you start the content switches, right? It's no longer so much about, the starting pitcher at the big league level on that day. It's like, hey, what's the AA lineup looking like and who's banging there?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a grind out there for sure. But I think what's interesting as well is for a lot of people are really, casual fans might be surprised because the Marlins did make the playoffs. Unlike my stupid team last year, the Marlins did make the playoffs. Now, you make that face like, was it a little fluky? Did they get their butts kicked in the first round? Sure. But it's really interesting. And I think that one of the things that I think makes the Marlins trade deadline so interesting from my perspective is not just that they made trades with the Padres, but the Luis Arraez trade was so early. And that to me was a signal that they were like, we know this isn't going to replicate. We know that we need to trade big time. And considering that teams knew you were trading, I was critical. of the Padres trade deadline. I am not big on relievers. I never will be. I just don't trust them. I don't like giving up too many assets for them. It's one thing to try and make your bullpen better. It's another thing to give up your last remaining top pitching prospect in Robbie Snelling for a guy who's only at least for now, we'll see what happens in the offseason, who's just a rental reliever. He's a good one. He got roughed up the other day, though. I just think that it's a lot to give up. And then you look at, say, the success of Ryan Weathers over for the Marlins, which I was going to ask you about. He's been infinitely better with the Marlins than he was there. So I just think it's really fascinating how many things the Marlins did. And in my opinion, when you look at both leagues, who's the bad team in the American League? The White Sox. That team is the worst case scenario. Same thing with the Angels, I think, are another one. You don't want to be them. So I think for Marlins fans, it might just be nice to see we committed, though. We committed in a direction. Here's where we're going. You don't have to worry about some player. Like maybe could they have traded an Edward Cabrera? Could they have traded I forgot if Dylan Flores is even on the team anymore. Could you have traded some other players? Maybe. Right? Jake Berger, maybe, sure. But the biggest ones they got rid of. And I think that that's really big because look at the Angels. They had Rengifo and they didn't trade him for some reason and he's out for the season. Right? It's like, what are you guys doing? Like it just seems like they don't know what they're doing. So it's got to be at least, somewhat positive on that front.
I think that's the interesting bit and the shift, the way things have gone within this season generally is at the start of the year, obviously Peter Bendix in, Kim Ang out. A little bit uncertain about what this means. Team just made a postseason run with a 5 seed in the NL. And so you're kind of looking around thinking, okay, how are the Marlins going to, it was a little bit of a fluky year. Like a lot went their way. And you think, okay, what additions will you make to try to sustain that level? That's kind of where the fan base's heads are at that point, right? Bendix comes in and they do nothing. And so you then start to consider, okay, what's the plan? And for me, I think that's where, it wasn't clear in the early stages. It was one eye to the present, one eye to the future was kind of, the mixed signals that were sent. But I think that was a little bit of a mistake from Bendix, really. I'd have preferred him to rock in and just go, listen, guys, this isn't sustainable. I've been in an organization. I know, like the Rays, I know what good looks like, and the Marlins isn't that. And so let's blow this bad boy up. And I think the fans would have completely just embraced that. But the PR approach was, I think, slightly the wrong one. But now, to your point, you've seen a deadline. You've seen what the Marlins have done. You know the clear direction now. And the Marlins have a plan. To your point, like the White Sox, the Angels, do they have a plan? What is their plan? Uncertain. The Marlins' plan is clear. It's just going to take a long time. That's the challenge, right? It's like you're asking the Marlins fan base again, hey, guys, we're going to do a rebuild again. And, it's the third one in 10 years, but this one will work. Trust us, right?
This one will work, exactly. But I think what's important is that you're not one of those teams where you're in nowhere's land. Look, the best thing that can happen for a team that's bad is you get a new owner that's going to want to spend. Unfortunately, that didn't happen here necessarily with the Marlins. The second best thing is you have a deadline like they did. I mean, this is a team that, forget the Padres deals. They got what's his face? Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers, who didn't seem like it was going there. They got Adam Mazur from the Padres, who has struggled a lot, but you know who else struggled? Ryan Weathers with control, especially. So maybe you can, that's a guy that we've seen very little of. You know what I mean? Maybe they turn him into a high impact player of any sort, right? You got Graham Pauley, a player that I really like, a player that a mutual friend of ours, Arm Layton, was a big fan of heading into the season, who just didn't really have a role for this Padres team because they are contending right now. So that's just some trades, but I'm with you, man. I think that it's just all about committing, and they made a lot of moves, and I'm thankful. At least you gave us some good players. It's kind of fun having a bunch of relievers on your team. I'm a big fan of Brian Hoeing so far. It's nice. It's cool. You know what I mean? And just on the East Coast, let me tell you, everybody's losing their mind over the Jazz Chisholm thing. Everyone's like, wow, how is this kind of player allowed to be on the Yankees? That never happens. What is it? So it was a very active trade deadline for both of our teams, just in very different ways. But guys, let's talk about this upcoming series. Let's talk a little bit more about the specifics when it comes to the Padres and Marlins in terms of the now and not 5 years from now when the Marlins are, super built. They're the new Orioles. Maybe that's what will happen. But guys, let me take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors today, and that is our friends over at Liquid IV. And here's the thing, man, it's summertime. It's hot out here, and you got to stay hydrated. It's very, very important. when you're taking in America's pastime specifically, you're going to want to check out Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. It is a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon, lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. And they've got all sorts of flavors. And I'm a big fan, Peter. Big fan of flavors. All right. I'm a Ben and Jerry's enthusiast. I was a Built Bar enthusiast. I love when you just keep giving me flavors, and they've got all of your favorite classics, such as acai berry, lemon lime, and pina colada. And of course, these are healthy for you, not just in the hydration sense, but they get you hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the number one powered hydration brands in America. Go check it out. Just whip your water out, throw a pack in there, boom, you're ready to go. Just as simple as that. And let me tell you, because you're listening to this podcast, as always, we got a deal for you. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. Nice and simple. 20% off your first order. MLB at liquidiv.com. Go check that out. But that's not all. I want to talk about something that, I'm familiar with water. I am not familiar with driving the best cars out there. But don't worry, because the good folks over at eBay have you covered. eBay Motors, guys. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships. It's the same thing for having a great, great vehicle, guys. Let me tell you. And they're experts at it. We've been doing this sponsor for a long time over at eBay Motors. Everything from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, new carpet, and more. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed, to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, and you most certainly are not burning cash. So go check it out, guys. Keep it alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions applied. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing into the second segment of this podcast. Oh, man. Here we go, man. Sorry that the sponsorship for eBay Motors didn't include the UK. My apologies for that. That must have been tough.
No. It always pains me when that read is, only eligible, in the US or, whatever it might be. So yeah, I feel that one. It cuts me deep every time, that one.
Absolutely. I feel that, man. Let's talk about this series first. We're going to get into the pitching matchups and whatnot. But first, I want to start with, and the pitching matchups might be the biggest thing, but I want to start with just, can you tell us about what are kind of the biggest players going on for the Marlins right now? What are the biggest storylines, aside from the fact that they are entering the rebuild? Some players to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, for sure. Our teams are now intertwined this year for the obvious trades we've made.
Yeah.
And the guy to watch from a Marlins perspective at this point, Luis Arraez was an absolute king for the Marlins for basically the 1 year he was there. And fans loved him, loved the profile. It's what Kim Ang built. She went ultra contact heavy, and Arraez is a big part of that. First cycle for the organization. And he's then obviously moved on very early, like you already mentioned. Like that was a very early trade of a key player for a playoff team the season before. Nevertheless, the Marlins have discovered Luis Arraez 2.0 in Xavier Edwards. You've got Xavier Edwards with exactly the same. You go and look at their Savant pages. I know that's what you like to do to compare players. Go and check out Xavier Edwards' Savant page. Look at Luis Arraez's Savant page side by side. They're almost identical, apart from Xavier Edwards walks more. And that, it's a very, very similar. So the Marlins have not stumbled across, but Xavier Edwards has found the opportunity. And now he then goes and hits the second organizational cycle, back-to-back years. You wait 30 years and then finally two go in back-to-back seasons. So wild scenes. Xavier Edwards has been immense for the Marlins, since he's moved into this everyday role at shortstop, nonetheless. So they had no shortstop. Hey, we're going to throw Xavier Edwards out there and let's see what he does. He's been fine at shortstop, but offensively, he has been on fire. And actually, since the trades happened, and Xavier Edwards was hurt in spring and early part of the season, so not as much plate appearances as Arraez, but Xavier Edwards is outperforming Arraez, actually, in the time frame they've both been playing. So keep your eye on him. You mentioned Jake Berger earlier as well. Jake Berger has been on fire recently. like 10 home runs in like 25 games or something, Burger's come alive. They had
Yeah.
a big promo. They've got a big promo in Miami where if Burger hits a home run, then it's free burgers the next day from Burger King. So, kids are getting obese in the Miami area at the moment because they're having to eat so many free burgers because of Burger's home runs. So yeah, Burger and Xavier Edwards, are the main standouts. Beyond that, the funny thing is, you look at the offense; it's effectively a offense filled with waiver claims and guys you've never heard of. Guys, if you said this player is playing and you showed them their face, you have no clue who this guy is. So, that's the kind of where the Marlins are at this point. It's fun in a different way.
Yeah.
But, those are the standout guys, like offensively. And then, rotation-wise, we'll talk about that in a sec. But, that's kind of where we're up to, where probably if you can get, a clean 1, 2, 3, in the first inning, then, you're going to keep this offense, pretty quiet, I think. So that's probably the key for the Padres this series.
Absolutely. And it's going to be important because the Padres are coming off a series sweep against the Pittsburgh Pirates, but they used up a lot of their bullpen. So it's going to be interesting to see who's available. So hopefully they don't get down early or anything like that, or at least at the very minimum, their pitchers are going to at least have to just not get exploded immediately, which thankfully seems like isn't necessarily likely given this current Marlins lineup construction. But with Xavier Edwards, speaking of Padres, former Padres prospect who looked like was another, here's the thing. Everyone keeps bringing up how much the Preller trades the prospects. My issue isn't trading the prospects and who he trades. My issue is more of like an asset management thing and using everything up and then just putting yourself in a position where you're not as flexible with your roster. But the players that they've traded prospect-wise, most of them haven't turned out incredible or even very good. I mean, Luis Patino was once upon a time a top prospect for them. You look at guys like the players that they gave up for Yu Darvish and Blake Snell, the players that they gave up for Mike Clevenger to a small degree. They haven't always turned out amazing, especially the pitchers. But lately, Xavier Edwards, former prospect that was dealt in the Tommy Pham trade, if I'm not mistaken. And for a long time, it was like, wow, they lucked out. They got rid of him. They sold him high, and he left the Rays too. If the Rays can't figure him out, then no one can, right? But instead, this is a guy who's got a 12.4% walk rate. He's actually, the best on base guy so far for the Marlins this year in terms of his walk rate. The only players that have been better are Christian Pache for the 4 games that he played in terms of the walk rate, right? So that doesn't really count. And then there's Jonah Bride and Fidel Brujan. So he's been up there, and he's hitting the ball a little bit better. And like you said, actually draws walks, which is the really frustrating thing if you're a Luis Arraez follower, because for the Padres this year, he's been okay, but he's not what he was last year. And he's hitting into a lot more double plays this year. I'm pretty sure he's at 17 or 18 already. He had 18 all of last season. So that hasn't been as great. But that's the thing. Xavier Edwards, proof that it's never over. And just at 24 years old, that's really, really exciting. 157 WRC plus on the year. He's hitting 374. He's going to be interesting. Hopefully they can retire him, because it seems like after him, just watch out. Maybe Jake Berger can be silenced. Maybe bring in some, what's the purple guy? Grimace. That's the other guy for Burger King, right? We need some Grimace on him, the Grimace shake. Give him a Grimace shake. Maybe that'll stop him. That would be great. But yeah, man. And I think for the Padres side of things, the ones to look out for, to me, I think the most underrated batters on this team are Donovan Solano and Kyle Higashioka. Speaking of players who have turned it around much later, Kyle Higashioka all of a sudden can hit. He's always been a really great, if you're a football fan, American football, my apologies, sir, fan, there's always this middle ground where there's quarterbacks that are not good enough to be starters, but way overqualified for backups. That's kind of what Higashioka's always been. But this year, this guy has just unlocked something. He's hitting home runs at timely situations. He at one point was just turning into Barry Bonds at the plate, and he's always been good defensively. So far this year, just to give you an idea, 130 WRC plus. What? I don't know where this came from. He's not drawing a lot of walks. Right? 6% walk rate isn't bad, but not a lot. He doesn't hit for the highest average in the world, but man, he slugs the crap out of the ball. I don't know how much longer it's going to continue, but I'm all for it. And then Donovan Solano, type of player, I'm surprised a team like the Marlins didn't sign. Had a good season last year, the type of guy that you could flip at the deadline. He's been amazing for this team so far, and they just picked him off the scrap heap. 129 WRC plus on the season. Had a 4-hit game the other day. He's just a hitter, right? And he's been better than a Luis Arraez, because what is it? He takes walks. So that's been great about him. So those are the two players kind of to keep an eye out for, I think, for both teams when it comes to the lineup. But we got to talk about, man, the pitching, because what it feels like, it's always been pitching for the Marlins, and we're going to see some interesting matchups this weekend that we're going to talk about in just 1 second, folks. But first, I want to talk to you, folks, you fine, lovely folks out there, about the number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. If you've been watching the show, you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about PrizePicks, folks. And here's the thing with PrizePicks. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. It is fantastic. And here's the thing. You can 100 times your money. That's a big multiplier. And you can do so while watching Team USA, or Team UK. Okay, let me be fair out here. Win the gold this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. And if you're like Peter and you're grimacing, I don't want to root for USA, don't worry. They've got general deals and promotions as well, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup better hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So what are you waiting for? Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Very easy. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. And just like that, we are thriving and vibing to the last segment of this show. I played the Locked On opening twice there. My mistake, good folks. But so I just like the idea of people saw like a quick clip of me drinking water. Then it went back again. We're back. We're back for sure this time. Peter, let's talk about the projected pitching matchups. Starting with Friday, to me, this one's the most interesting. Because I'm weird and I'm a hipster for sure. But it is Martin Perez versus Edward Cabrera. Now, from the Padres' perspective, fans, look out for this one. Looked disturbingly good in his first start. Has not been very good. I think that his one season with the Rangers 2 years ago was a little bit fluky, but season high on whiffs and his pitch usage changed. And the Padres have a legendary pitching coach in Ruben Niebla. So let's see how he does again. Does he generate whiffs? Does he generate soft contact? Those are the things to look out for if he does well. If he gets lit up, then it's like, guys, this dude is just here to throw innings. But keep an eye out for that. But Peter, what can you tell us about Edward Cabrera? Because not too long ago, I remember drafting this guy in like the 6th round of fantasy baseball. What's going on?
I'm going to use one word only to describe Edward Cabrera, and I'll describe him as erratic. I mean, boy, oh boy, Eddie Cabrera, from start to start, inning to inning, batter to batter almost. You literally don't know what you're going to get. And it is extremely frustrating, actually, because the tools, the stuff, everything is there. The one moment you look at it and go, this dude is elite. And then all of a sudden, something happens where he just loses the strike zone for a second, and it just snowballs. And all of a sudden, he walks the bases juiced, and there's no outs. And you're like, oh, here we go. And it's just the lack of consistency with the guy. That's been the challenge. But you'll see it. You'll see it, Friday evening, where there'll be times when he's throwing 95-mile-an-hour changeups and it looks unhittable. And you're like, how is he doing this? But then all of a sudden, probably the second or third time through, something will go wonky probably, and bases will be juiced. There'll be 4 innings in, and you go, we need the bullpen already. So Eddie Cabrera, just an enigma, but erratic, but fun to watch. Anything can happen at any moment with this dude. And it wouldn't shock me, to be honest with you, if Eddie Cabrera just randomly at any point just threw a no-hitter in 87 pitches or something. Like, I could absolutely see that from nowhere. But very erratic guy, probably shown by his ERA at this point, particularly his whip. I guess you dig into his whip and it is not optimal, let's say. But this matchup is probably the fun one, no doubt. Headed on to Saturday, Rodri Munoz is going, and listen, if you're a home run fan, if you like seeing home runs hit by any team, then tune into a Rodri Munoz start, because he is being serving up meatballs at historic levels, to be honest with you. The stuff is very intriguing, and you'll see this, but man, oh man, when he misses in meatball territory, and they get dispatched. So that's going to be very, very interesting. He was optioned, but then, the Trevor Rogers deal drops in, so he's then recalled. So, for Munoz, he's, pitching for his future too. So I'm interested to see what it looks like. It's TBD at the moment for the Padres Saturday, but maybe, with your crystal ball and knowing your rotation, where you think they're going to land.
So speaking of, we mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Padres bullpen was taxed. One of the reasons for that was because the Pirates, in their little scheming ways, we had a rain delay, but he pitched 1 inning. So instead he had to get pulled from the start. So that was weird. It felt a little bit of gamesmanship. It's like, really, guys? It was very clear the rain was pouring down, and then the drainage wasn't working. So I got my eye on you, Pittsburgh. But I think that you probably see Dylan Cease this weekend because of that. And at least on what I'm seeing is that Matt Waldron could be getting the start this weekend. Joe Musgrove was projected to come back this weekend too. They might save him because of what I just mentioned, which is that they might just use Cease for the Sunday game or Saturday game. We'll have to see to confirm. But if it is Matt Waldron versus Roddery Munoz, huge favor for the Padres, because Waldron has been awesome, but he also can serve up some meatballs sometimes, because the knuckleball, when it's not on, well, there's a reason why the pitch became a little bit of an endangered species. It's really hard if it's not working. But when it is, it's excellent, and you will get some whiffs, especially on the right side of the plate. 32.8% whiff rate on the right side of the plate this year. And on the inside of the plate, the sweeper. That's what has made Matt Waldron better this year. It's the knuckleball. You have Patrick Mahomes tweeting about it and all that stuff, but it's the sweeper. It has the 6th best run value in the sport, and opponents, the expected weight on base when he throws on the left side of the plate is like 123, which is the best on basically every pitcher that can hit that side of the zone. So he's a control thing. If the control is there and he's able to hit the sides of both plate, he's good. Batters are basically not hitting it, but it's also true they can hit the knuckleball pretty hard. So look out for that. But Waldron has been just a godsend for this team this year, for a team that just has had some injury problems with their rotation and been a little bit inconsistent. The fact that they were able to turn Waldron, who nobody heard about before, a player that I got his name wrong like multiple times. I kept calling him Michael Waldron, who's like a writer for a bunch of Marvel movies. And I kept calling him that before the season. It took me a minute. I kept doing that by accident. So that should be an interesting start for him. And then Sunday's game, it is saying projected Max Meyer versus Dylan Cease, at least on my app. Max Meyer, I feel like I've heard a lot about this dude, and he just keeps not necessarily he doesn't stay up. What exactly is going on there? Because this is another, shining prospect name that I've heard that hasn't quite broken out yet.
Yeah, big name. And I think, unfortunately for Max, he was truly ascending and working his way through, AA, AAA a few seasons back. And, he created this opportunity from that. Debuted for the Marlins, was fine in his debut. Second, then timeout, second start. Hurt and Tommy John. Then you miss a year, right? And then, so he's back this year after Tommy John. The Marlins had a desperate need to use him at the start of the campaign, because effectively the whole of the rotation was down on the IL early in the year. So Max Meyer started the campaign at the big league level, pitched an absolute gem, a career outing against the Braves, and was subsequently sent down to AAA. So he's been what I would describe as, pretty bluntly, service time manipulated down in AAA for the majority of this campaign. But he's now back up. He was going through the motions a little bit in AAA, was the reports actually. He wasn't overly enjoying that situation being down there, believing he's a big leaguer, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been underwhelming since he's returned. His slider's amazing, but the fastball doesn't miss enough bats, and it's hittable. He needs that third pitch badly. And, for me, it's, can you get the fastball to play a little bit more? And can you get a third pitch? If you can't, I'm very interested to see what the future holds for Max Meyer, to be honest with you. So there's a few question marks. Spoke about it on the show earlier this week. There's a few question marks in Max Meyer. So this is going to be a big test for him. Big test against a lively offense, clearly. So it's going to be a fun start, particularly if Cease is going. So, that this could be a stunner. I mean, it's a day game as well. Perfect UK friendly. So,
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe this will be the random pitchers duel that you don't see coming. We're always due for one of those at some point. But yeah, Dylan Cease has been on fire. I already talked about his start. But since July 13th, I'm going to read you his starts. At Atlanta, 6 innings, 1 hit allowed, 11 Ks. At Cleveland, 7 innings, 1 hit allowed, 10 Ks.
Oh my days.
Washington threw a little no-hitter you might have heard about in the news.
Oh,
Then against the Dodgers, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 6 Ks, and then his last start, he only went an inning, got 2 Ks. The guy's been on a rampage for a while now, and what I've heard is that he was tipping his pitches a little bit, and he had made some adjustments with having the glove a little bit too close to himself before he threw. And ever since then, he's been awesome. So he's had beginning of season untouchable and lately untouchable. He had a little bit of a bad spat in June. I think his ERA was 4.9, but ever since then, he's clearly figured it out. Makes a lot of swings and misses. Can't wait to see how he does against Xavier Edwards. That should be an interesting one because that guy doesn't strike out and he walks. So other than that, though, clearly another advantage for the Padres and a big one. You could see some big time fireworks, some big time numbers, especially after being wronged by the Pittsburgh Pirates at his last start. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But man, looking forward to the series. As always fun playing. I don't like projecting series anymore. I just think it's lame. You know what I mean? Like, why? I think that they'll split the series, or I think they'll win 2 out of 3. No, I don't care. Okay. I think that most importantly to watch this weekend for the Padres is Martin Perez's start on Friday and seeing whether or not they might have something here and they knew something at the deadline, or they were like, all right, let's just take that guy to throw innings. So that's going to be interesting to start. And then also just whether or not this offense keeps going. What about you, Peter?
My eyes predominantly are actually on the Padres, to be honest with you. I'm very intrigued because, for me, I look at the NL West and that all of a sudden is open. Like the division is open all of a sudden and feels like the Padres are alive. So coming into Miami, a 3-game series, can they perform? Can they deliver against? And what we haven't talked about from a Marlins perspective, this will probably surprise people because you look at the record and see where they're at. They haven't lost a series since the All-Star break, which is wild considering the lack of major league talent that they have on this roster and the injuries that are there. So, they've got the end of the 4-game series with the Reds this evening. So this stat may not be true by the time this podcast airs. Yeah. But, they've been playing well. They've been plucky. So they're no pushovers. People are playing for jobs. I'm interested to see, can the Padres handle their business? Can they win the series at least? So that for me is intriguing. Clearly, there's some old friends in this series in Luis Arraez and Tanner Scott. Yeah. Tanner Scott, was the best reliever in the game in Lone Depot. He's had a couple of, interesting outings thus far. Former fish-on-fish crime, I think, with Jacob Stallings taking him deep as well in his first ever outing. So, Stallings knows Tanner Scott as good as anyone. So, I mean, it wasn't a terrible pitch. I mean, it was like it was fine. So, I'm closely watching that. And really, from a Marlins perspective, right now, it's all about, I'm looking at Max Meyer and Eddie Cabrera. Those are 2 guys that really, it's like, can we see them just take the next step, continue to progress?
They didn't trade Cabrera, so maybe they still think that there's some hope there to salvage him in some sort of way. We'll have to see. Yeah, either way, one thing's for sure. Always a pleasure talking with you, Peter, about the Marlins and general baseball stuff as well. Hopefully everything is safe and lovely over there out in the UK. And everybody listening, thank you, as always, for listening to the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. And go check out Locked On Marlins as well, of course. The best fish out there. Let me tell you, they got all the best fish out there. Fish and chips, I've heard that they're known for in the UK. That's one thing I've heard. So they're also known for the Locked On Marlins podcast. Go check that out. Follow Peter on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. And follow me, best handle in the game, at JAVIIPENO. Until next time, stay safe, my Friar Faithful homies. And stay majestic, Miami Marlin brethren. Take care.